One. Welcome to MMA Fancast. My name is Luke, and I have the honor and privilege of inviting back on the show Buddy the dog and his friends Karli Jo and Justin the General Patton. Buddy and friends, welcome to the show. Well, there he is, already getting excited. It is great having you guys on the show. I should note, Buddy, I think this is his third or fourth time on the show. Justin, you've been on several times. It's my first time having Karli Jo Thomas on. You're now going by the nickname Mail Lady. At some point, we need to know where that nickname came. But you guys are both fighting. You're both fighting at 247 Fighting Championships, Brawl in the Berg 12 at the Meadows Casino, July 9th, which is just going to be a huge card. And it'll be exciting to see both of you. Is this the first time you guys are both going to be fighting on the same card on the same night?
Yeah,
first time.
And let's get to kind of Karli. Karli, I know you went amateur debut in not too long ago, 2021. You went 2-0 in 2021. You since picked up a decision loss this year, but still a great start to your amateur career. What got you into MMA? It still was only been, a year and a half since you started fighting.
Actually, when I was about 12, my mom had me and my sister do like self-defense when we were young, and I kind of just liked it and pretty much stuck with it ever since.
Wow, that's a great story. Also to point out that young training, I was interviewing somebody for the card July 9th as well, and he was talking about training since 16, training defense and martial arts since 12. I think it really shows that, 20, 30 years ago, people came from boxing or wrestling or some other situation. Now, more and more people are training it from the ground up, which is just spectacular. What have you, Karli, we're going to get to Justin here, but what have you, Karli, learned? 3 fights into your amateur career, 2-1 on your career, very good overall. Even with just coming off a loss, still you're learning, you're developing. What have you been learning in your MMA career so far?
I guess since I started fighting, it's like you start to look at training differently. Like you have to think about stuff differently. You don't just go in there and like throw punches. There's actually like a thought process behind it, and you have to, I don't know how to. You're not just like doing the move. You have to actually like there's a purpose. There's a reason you're doing something. You can't just do whatever, because then you're gonna get caught because that person's doing stuff too,
Well, that is the big difference between sparring, where hopefully your partner is trying to help you work on something specifically, whereas an opponent is actually trying to take advantage of whatever move or whatever situation or position you might be given, which is, obviously a thing. Now, right now you're training between 2 gyms. So talk a little bit about the 2 gyms you're training at. I know the General's been training out of the Mat Factory for a long time, and that's exciting too. But let's talk to you a little bit about your training partners, and how that's been going for you.
Well, I've been training All-American, pretty much since it's been open. There used to be an old gym, and then that gym ended up shutting down, and Nick opened up All-American, and I've been with him since I was a kid pretty much. And he's taught me a lot. He's been like a really good mentor in my life. And then just, I would say beginning of last year, I think I started going to the factory. Like on Sundays, I'd go up and I just train on Sundays with Nick, and sometimes Ethan Hayes would come up and train too and stuff. So we started doing that, and then I just like really love the environment up there. It's different. That's really the only way I can put it. Like, we train really hard at All-American, of course, absolutely. Nick pushes us to our limits, and then like you go up to Isaac's and it's like the same thing. And it's like a really good, I think really good like mix to do both. Take like from Nick and take from Isaac, and everybody that teaches All-American, everybody that teaches at the factory, take them from both and like mix it together. It's I think a solid combination.
Sure, we hear all great things about Coach Isaac Greeley. Obviously, he's a legend. Nick Brown, you're referring to Nick Brown. I had the honor of having him on the show before one of his Bellator fights, and he is doing incredibly well. For anybody out there, watch Nick Brown in Bellator. He's moving his way up in his category. I believe he's still undefeated in Bellator, and he has some really impressive finishes. Well, getting to you, Justin, I got to call your fight where you used the Von Preux. Very exciting. Always thrilled to see somebody use that. We had you on the show to talk about that fight, which was great. You've since had another fight at 247. I sadly wasn't able to be there for that one. And you did pick up a loss. What is kind of what are you currently working on, and what have you learned, or what are you kind of developing from that? Because you're still young in your pro career and you have a lot of building to do.
I learned I cut too much weight. I was sucking weight, and I mean, like, I'm not making any excuses, you know what I'm saying? You have to take your losses for what they are. There's things I have to get better on, obviously. We all have to. But I cut too much weight and I died out at the end of the second round. I could feel it. I knew what I needed to do, but my body I couldn't get it to do it. And I hit a wall, you know? So we're moving up to 140, I think, or 139 +1 this fight. And then eventually, hopefully, making it to 145, put a little mass on, you know? I think that'll go a long way.
I'm glad you and your coaches are still working on that. It's a hard thing because I know you had a lot of success at 35 in amateur, and sometimes, you're getting older, your body's changing. We've seen, even at the very high UFC level, some fighters get better when they go up in weight. There used to always be this mindset, get lower and lower, but we've seen fighters actually do better because their body's more nourished, their body has more stamina. So the fact that you learn from that and that you're honest enough to yourself and to your coaches to figure that out, I think just builds, you going forward. What is something you've been always well-rounded, Justin? I'll ask this question to you too, Karli Jo, which is for you, you kind of have known to be a striker. You've known to be submission. You've known to have grappling. So what are you still kind of looking to develop in your professional career as you continue?
Everything, honestly. Like, I'm still working with Chris Williams. I'm working with Phil Amaris. I'm working with Isaac with my wrestling, grappling with Matt Schaefer and stuff. Chris Dempsey. Like, I'm trying to learn it all still and develop like Bobby Murder actually likes to say, like, your own pattern. You know what I mean? Like, my own setups and my own stuff I like to do, and then make them bite off those feints and then set up your own stuff off that. So, like, still developing my own style, but putting like other people's flavors on it, you know?
Certainly. And some of that will only come out when you're actually fighting other pros, where you're allowed to do things like knees to the face, elbows to the face, which you really can't do in training in a way that is respectful of your sparring
Right.
partner. So I do think that there's a lot of things that you kind of have to develop when you're live. Even your Von Preux that we talked about, that choke, you've practiced that a bunch, but putting that together against a real professional opponent, and you didn't even think he'd give that to you. You and I talked about afterwards, you thought that he would change out of it, which really you should do. If you're holding onto a guillotine and somebody goes
Right.
to crossbody, you should let go of it. If anybody's learning jiu-jitsu, if you're holding onto a guillotine and the person escapes your guard and gets to crossbody or cross mount, you need to let go of it so you don't get caught in Von Preux, but you set it up and you finish with that. Karli, you're still very new, as far as development goes. What do you kind of enjoy training the most? What aspect of MMA are you trying to develop the most as you go forward?
I honestly couldn't pick one thing because I like it all. I love it all. Whenever I started like younger, like I was like always like striking or like grappling. There's like the in between part of like I kind of consider like the wrestling part of it, like the transition from the striking to the ground, like the takedowns off the cage and wherever they may come from, like that kind of thing. Because I like to grapple. I like to strike, but I like to grapple, and that's why I cage fight. Because so I'm kind of just like, I feel like more recently, like after my last fight, we've been really pushing, I feel like, bringing it all together, like bringing my striking and my grappling like together and making it work. Because that was my issue. I couldn't take the girl down in my last fight. She was a really tough opponent. She had a really good right hand. And so right. So I wasn't able to take her down, and we just been drilling it like like crazy. Honestly, it's like all we do. It seems like sometimes, but I feel so much more confident in that now. And, I'm like, if I want to take somebody down, I think I can.
Well, that's a great attitude to have. I could tell you were also looking at Justin, training on things that didn't work in a fight is how you get better. You also were going up against, a very good opponent. You were 2-0. She was 3-0 at the time. So challenging yourself. It's a Russian name, so it's hard for me to pronounce, but Nikola will say,
Nikola
K is her last
Kaperska.
name, but what?
It was, I think, Nikola Kaperska. She's from
Sure.
Poland, and she's a
Poland.
professional basketball player. Yeah, so she was just like a solid athlete, really. I mean, a good fighter. I mean, she was, a good fighter. She's only been training for like a year and a half, I think now. So she's gonna do really well.
Well, we've seen it, and it's a big congratulations to you. You're competing against great athletes, and we've seen fighters, particularly in the female division where things, are a little tighter. You might end up facing her or other opponents again, both in amateur and pro. We've seen pro female fighters, obviously, Joanna Champion just retired, but Joanna Champion fought several people several times because of the way it goes. So I think it is always good to be learning from wins and losses. And so now let's get to the fights. Both of you guys will be fighting different opponents, obviously, July 9th. Yeah, we listen, we won't even hazard a guess what would happen if you guys got in an exchange. We won't even go there, but let's talk about your opponents. Justin, let's start with you. You're 1-2, you're fighting a 1-2 pro. So that seems on paper to be a really kind of nice matchup. You're both coming off losses. So what have you been training for specifically for Ahmed? Or is it continuing to just develop yourself? I know at this level of pro, you kind of might need to do both.
Yeah, a little bit of just developing my own style and just kind of keeping the pressure, mixing up my punches and my shots together, and getting like dominant positions on the ground and holding them and keeping them there so they can't get up. Like, and if they do get up, they're gassed, and we get right back on them, like giving no breaks, trying to keep that pressure up.
Okay. And Karli, for you, you're fighting someone it seems to be, obviously a good match. I always give people credit for, for Jim Mooney and others for matchmaking. So what have you been training for your opponent, or is it just continuing to focus on yourself? Amateur can be tough to train for certain opponents because there's not a lot to know on your opponent, but what have you been training specifically for this fight?
Kind of just keep doing what I'm doing, just pressing down the gas harder on everything, not really. I mean, we're, thinking about, kind of what she might do, but not too much, kind of just worrying about sharpening my tools and kind of just doing what I, thinking about doing what I want to do, not really stressing too much, like, about what she's going to do, because we really don't know. She's fought 6 times, I think, which is a good bit, but she's learning too, so she could come out with something different. I mean, she's a 2-stripe purple belt, so I'm like expecting some type of grappling exchanges, and but I'm ready for wherever, whatever happens. Like, it's a fight, so you just got to be ready to fire and everything.
Well, speaking of it being a fight, Brawl in the Berg 12 is going to be an incredible card, 247, taking over the Meadows Casino for the first time. Both of you guys have a hometown push. Obviously, the Mad Factor has a lot of people that always fight on and go to 247 cards, as well as All-American is still close and kind of a connected gym. So talk a little bit about what it's like to fight with a lot of support, both from the crowd and from the Mad Factor and other local gyms.
Well, I've actually never fought like close to home before. So this is my first like close to home fight. It's about 50 minutes from, about 50 minutes from my parents where I used to live, and then about 50 minutes from here, probably, right? Something like that. But so I'm excited to like be close to home, because my last 3 fights, like I hear my parents in the crowd and like my sister and stuff like that. Justin at my second fight. But other than that, you don't really like hear too much for yourself. People aren't cheering you that much or anything like that. So I think that might be different. I don't know. I might not even realize it because when you're walking to the cage, you're kind of just focused. You know, you're not really. Some stuff's like I feel like the sounds are like muffled or something. You know, you don't really.
You hear like one voice.
Yeah,
you know,
you
like-
you like recognize a voice. You might hear it, but everything else is just like that. Like you don't really focus on it. You know. So, but yeah, I am excited to fight close to home. I think it's going to be a good show, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun fighting on the same card. You know. I feel we kind of both have like the same mindset on fight day. We like both be left alone and do our own thing and stuff. So we won't really get in each other's way too much or anything. I think it'll be good time.
Well, I was just gonna say, it can be hard having teammates, and then obviously as far as couples go, it can be even harder, but it can also be a benefit because you both know what you go through, you both kind of know the routine, and you're coming from gyms that are big enough. And we've talked about this before. You guys mentioned Bobby Murder. It's important to have coaches and also fighters that really rally around fighters when they're fighting. I know you guys have both said this. People forget that because we think at the UFC level, a lot of those guys are pros and that's what they do. But at the lower levels, at the regional levels, a lot of the coaches and fighters, it could be their full-time job or it could be sort of what they do on the side. And it really means a lot when you have support in the corners. And obviously that's very important. Justin, you've kind of become a 247 staple. You fought all over the place before. You had a really long amateur career until you fought for the first time at a title fight actually for 247. Then all your pro fights have been for 247. You've really found a home there. What's it like fighting for 247? And how excited are you to kind of move into the meadows? I know Ryan and Hunter and everybody at 247, including myself, are excited to kind of see a casino show because that a lot of times really builds up even more fans.
Yeah, I think it'll be cool. I always hear after my fights that my fans are the craziest and they're the loudest and they're like they turn up. So I'm pretty excited to go out there and hear everyone screaming and put on a good show for everyone. That's what we do it for. You do it for your people and you do it for yourself and you do it for your family. So it's like good to hear everyone and everyone, no matter win or lose, everyone always loves the fight and they know that they know I'll be back, they know I'll be fine. And I always hear that they're screaming and the most fans, loudest fans. I always hear that. I love it.
Well, that is definitely true. Having been ringside for most of your pro fights, I can say that you, as well as many other fighters, have great fan bases that get excited. You've always been very clear. Some of your losses, you're always willing to put in the work and come back better. You're still very young in your pro career. And, obviously, once you develop things together, you've got a good test in Ahmed. And it really will be exciting to see what both of you do. I appreciate you guys taking time out to bring Buddy and yourselves on to the show. It's always great. It's been great. Karli Jo, having you on for the first time of, I hope, many more. And the General, always great seeing you. I think we might be up over maybe half dozen times on the show. It's been great. I expect to continue to have you on the show. For everybody that hasn't gotten tickets, this is a big show. Please get tickets from everybody, from all the fighters. Get tickets directly from them. Get them from the gyms as well. If anybody's watching this that's too far away to come to the Meadows, check it out, pay-per-view on 247fighting.com. Thank you both for coming on. Can't wait to see what happens July 9th.
Sweet. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
You got it. Thank you guys. Take care.
See ya.
You
Peace.
too.